This is an I Am Listening exclusive podcast.
If you want to help the Green Party and the ethos that we're standing on, then please vote for us. We know that Labour are going to get in, but they need to be guided because they're as equally driven by business as the Tories are.
Hello and welcome to this little mini-series with me, Kaylee.
And me, Liz.
This is the Tread Lightly podcast with the Rainham Eco Hub. And in this mini-series, we are delving into local politics.
With the general election just around the corner, we hope that you find this episode interesting and insightful as we interview the MP candidates for Gillingham and Rainham about their policies and their thoughts on all matters relating to politics and the environment.
Hello and welcome back to this episode series where we are chatting today to Kate Belmonte. Is that right?
Well, technically it's Belmonte. So it's not quite as posh as you made it sound.
Oh, I call you Belmont.
No, it's Belmonte.
Oh, do you get annoyed with
the
people
full
like
name is, because this is Spanish, my husband's dad is Spanish, and the full name should be de Montserrat Garcia Belmonte.
Why are you not that?
But he went for Belmonte because it was easier for job applications and everything.
I'm so sorry because I really, really dislike it when people don't even take the time to learn somebody's name. Apologies.
Yeah, no, I get it. And it really frustrates me when I struggle, so it's just the way it is. But there are certain names now that you say incorrectly, and it's trying to remember that. But it's so important to recognise someone's name, especially when they've got heritage from overseas.
Yeah.
Now, that's part of who they are, and we should respect that.
Yeah, and learn it and understand it. So anyway, Kate,
Noted, Kate.
I am
sorry.
That wasn't a dig.
Make a note on there.
That's right. 0 out of 10.
Kate is running for Gillingham and Rainham MP for the Green Party. And so now I've stolen your thunder and I've introduced you. We kind of wanted to ask, who are you, Kate? Tell us who you are and
who am
a bit
I?
about yourself.
So, in effect, I'm like most of you listening, to be honest. I'm 40 now. I've lived in Medway since I was 5. I have 2 children. They go to local schools. I used to run a sign company, and then my health took me away from that, so I became more a graphic designer. I've also organised events across the world, and in Medway I held the What the Dickens in 2014, which was a sign writers event, and we welcomed craftspeople from across the world to Rochester, and we put on a fantastic event for them.
That's awesome.
And raised, I think, just over $3,500 for arthritis research.
Wow.
Just as a heads up, I do have arthritis as well. So you'll see me whizzing around my chair. But now my main focus since about 2019 was when I really started to understand the climate crisis in so much more detail. So I wanted to get involved in local politics. So I signed up to stand with the Greens in Twiddle as a paper candidate. Now, the Greens are very different to the other parties in so much as we don't accept massive donations from house builders, private equity firms. We take it from individuals, and that means that we do have limited finances. And we have some very dedicated volunteers who are all working passionately across Medway. None of us actually want to be doing politics. We're doing it because we feel we have to do it. And as part of that journey, when lockdown hit, I was completely locked away because I was told that I could die, so I had to shield. And I set up a local non-profit which was specifically targeting people that were isolated, so helping them with their shopping and their prescriptions, posting a letter for them. We would have chats over the phones to those that weren't able to go anywhere, and that's kind of sort of skyrocketed now. We do events across Medway where people come face to face, meet each other to fight loneliness and isolation. And we also do telephone befriending for people that can't get out of the house. And we're at the moment, if anyone's listening and wants to volunteer, we're actually looking for people to help with gardens, because we've got a lot of older people in Medway who have a garden that needs weeding, needs mowing. They physically can't do it anymore.
It brings a lot of joy, right?
Massively. I mean, nature is critical. I mean, it's literally scientifically important to us. Studies have shown how we actually physically change when we are in nature. the way that our electrons are we absorb the electrons through the soil into our body. Our endorphins go up, our serotonin goes up. So it's really important. So we want to make sure that they can use their gardens, because otherwise they're just outside looking through a window at it and they can't get out.
You are pretty busy then.
Yeah, too busy.
I've decided to stand as an MP. So what made you take that leap of faith?
Well, in all honesty, I didn't think we'd be fighting a general election in July. I was assuming, like most people, that he would be sensible and look after the British people and hold it in November, once all the parties had time to put together full costed manifestos. So I'd already put my name down before the election was called. I'd already been voted in by the local party and the members across Gillingham and Rainham. And the idea of me standing was, I know that I'm not going to be elected, but what we have to say is so critically important, especially at this time with the climate and the biodiversity crisis that we're seeing. And the reality is, if we don't get any votes, we don't get as much money come the next election. So for every vote that we receive, we will get funds to go towards campaigning the next election.
Oh, wow. I didn't know it worked like that.
Yeah, there is a title for it. I don't know all the jargon. But in effect, if you want to help the Green Party and the ethos that we're standing on, then please vote for us. We know that Labour are going to get in, but they need to be guided, because they're as equally driven by business as the Tories are. And Carla said it fantastically the other night when she said that Starmer has changed the Labour Party. He's changed it into the Conservative Party. And I think she's spot on there. We need an alternative vision. We need a party that can see the connections and then create things that work for everybody. And to me, that means backing the residents of this country more than the business. Because if you actually look at the businesses in this country, the vast majority are now owned by America. And we lose a lot of our... We don't get as many profits in this country because they're offshore, and a lot of them use Cayman Islands, where they actually basically register the business, then they rent back property to a company to reduce the amount that they pay. And all of this is completely legal, but it shouldn't be. And I think we need the Greens in there to be constantly fighting for every individual person. So that's why I stood to be the Green MP for Gillingham and Rainham. And I'm going to use my platform to shout that out as much as possible. I'm going to all the hustings that are taking place.
Well done. That's awesome.
So for this podcast, we have asked our listeners for some questions that we have put to each of the four main party candidates. And we are going to just share them with you now and just kind of see where you feel and see how you... see what you feel about these. Is that all right?
Yeah, go for it.
So the first one is, we met in a previous podcast with Tom from Kent Wildlife Trust, and he spoke to us about the fact that the UK is one of the world's most nature-depleted countries, and Kent is facing an insect Armageddon. I mean, that in itself just gets me, but... So with so much of Gillingham and Rainham's wildlife habitat being lost to development, how do you plan to recognise and mitigate the impact that meeting the housing crisis has on nature and wildlife?
Everyone says it's a really good question. I always say that. But he's right about the insects. I mean, even this year in my garden, there's far fewer insects pollinating our vegetables and fruit than we've ever seen. We've had a lot of development in Rainham, and I was part of the group that stopped the housing at the orchards in Pump Lane. So they wanted to put 1,250 houses there, and we managed to go to planning inspectorate, and they decided on our side and said that the development can't go ahead. So that's probably the only...
That was an impressive campaign.
That was an impressive campaign, and probably the only thanks I'll ever give to Michael Gove for anything, but he did back us in the end. But that doesn't detract from all the other thousands of houses that have been going up. I think a lot of it comes down to actually educating people. This year round, the way that the Labour administration administered the No Mow May was much better than we've seen before. People could actually enjoy it, but then not have their safety compromised.
It looks so much better, doesn't it?
It's beautiful. And coming along Sovereign Boulevard, or the top road as I call it, you know, the flowers that have been in bloom, the wildflowers that have been taking over from each other as the others die out have been beautiful.
I literally thought that yesterday when I was driving back. I thought, that looks so good.
The fact that they've left that metre and a half or whatever from the road means that people aren't going wild about the fact that it's blocking their view, which was so disappointing because people were so upset by it because obviously it was a safety risk. But it kind of undermined the whole principle of it, didn't it?
And so also, we've not seen any, well, I haven't seen any sort of like negative people's comments or anything.
Not at all.
This year.
Yeah,
so
social media last year was absolutely full. And they didn't follow the guidelines. The plant life guidelines have basically been fully administered this year from what I can see.
That is impressive because last year I think it was saying that they wanted to do something separate called Medway Meadows and didn't connect with plant life. So I think that is a good step forward, isn't it? And
no, it is, definitely.
Sorry.
And we're seeing, especially with the Eco Hub, we're seeing a lot more schools engaging and creating wildlife friendly zones. Local churches, we've been holding climate cafes separately through my non-profit, and the engagement that we've been seeing is fantastic. I also think, I think education about the importance of them, and that starts at school for obvious reasons, but the older generation as well. My husband's a landscape gardener and he's fed up of doing low maintenance, he's going to hate me for saying this, but low maintenance paving and decking because it kills the garden. He would much rather go into a garden and help to create a low maintenance but friendly. Because really, if you do know mow properly, there is no maintenance. And if you can then maintain that growth through to August, the insect life that you're helping is phenomenal. Because if you just cut everything down at the end of May, it's crazy. So it's like no mow May, then it's June, let it bloom in June. I don't know what July one's.
Knee-high July?
What is it?
Knee-high July.
Knee-high July, yeah, that's good.
Rhymes with August though, right?
So yeah, I think more people are coming around to it. I think we need to look at the use of pesticides because the council is still using glyphosate around certain areas, and there were a few public questions last year. Ask them not to spray it near playgrounds or dog walking routes, but they still spray it up and down the pavements. If you keep your eye open to a guy who's got some water on it looks like water
my God, on a little
in his back. It could be a little tractor. He could literally be walking with it in a rucksack, and that's basically there to kill the weeds. And in all honesty, I quite like the look of weeds along the road. It doesn't really bother me that much. I know that some people do, but I think that to have that respect for nature and biodiversity is so critical. And housing that has to go in. I mean, we're very much behind building just social housings, especially here in Medway. There are far too many 3-4 bed exec houses. Our youth can't afford them. We need starter homes, we need council houses, and they need to be on brown sites. We need to look at different locations and how people can work and live together without having to rely on vehicles. We are quite lucky, I think, in Gillingham and Rainham, in so much as everything's relatively close together. So if you're able-bodied, it doesn't take that long to walk into Rainham from Twiddle, for example. And I know that's not an option for everyone. I use a wheelchair when I'm out and about, so I have my car, which takes the wheelchair in, because in all honesty, it's an absolute nightmare getting on the bus with a wheelchair. I mean, you're waiting at a bus stop, the bus pulls up, he looks at you, generally he, maybe a she, I've got to get out and put the ramp down. And it's only fair. They've got long shifts. They're not earning much money. Then they've got to worry about getting me on the bus. Then I've got to get on the bus. Try not to run anyone over with a power chair. Get myself seated so I'm safe and I'm disconnected. And pray there's not an accident, because God knows what would happen with a massive wheelchair in an accident.
Oh God!
So we are lucky. You can walk, but I do think it takes a little bit of self-discipline. But the amount of people that go to gyms, let's not go to a gym. Let's start walking and cycling.
Well done you, look at that.
And I'd join you if I could, by the way. I'm not saying that as some lazy person who uses a wheelchair. If I could, I would.
No, totally. And I think that kind of comment around thinking differently, just changing behaviours as opposed to just doing what's always been done, I think is really crucial there.
Yeah, rethinking it, definitely.
Yeah. On air quality, we've got another question now that's coming from one of the people that are part of the hub. Mm-hmm. So Rainham has been in an AQMA, which is an air quality management area, since 2010. And whilst car emissions are generally improving, the volume and size of the vehicles, slow moving through the town, is getting worse. How would you and the Greens mitigate against the impact of development and recognise that in the local plan?
Well, this is going to turn some listeners off straight away. And I appreciate it's very divisive, but I think we have to start shaming people away from big vehicles. They're fashion. There's nothing more than fashion when you buy a Range Rover, a Land Rover, a big SUV. There is literally no point having it other than for how you look in that car or what it looks like on your drive. And considering how bad the air quality in Rainham is, it's not acceptable. Not only because of the size of them, because of air pollution, but parking. the amount of space they take up, the danger if you were to be hit by one or a child was to hit by one, the height. It's really, I'm still surprised that they're actually allowed to be driven in rural and small urban locations. Obviously, if you're a farmer and you need your 4x4, 100% totally get that. But there are some also amazing electrics coming over from America that are bigger than, in terms of the capability of off-roading, than our petrol alternatives. And I don't know if you know this about Rainham, but basically don't sit outside Costa. Because if you were to go onto, there's an air pollution website, and I can't remember the top of my head, but hopefully they'll link to it in the description. You can check what the air quality is like where you live. And the air quality outside Costa Coffee is one of the worst, if not the worst, in Medway. It's like 98 out of 100 being the worst. And obviously, we've now got the red routes, which, I'll be honest, are absolutely doing nothing for congestion in the slightest. I still question the decision. I don't question the decision. I think the decision was wrong. The council will be spending over £1 million for red routes, which aren't going to stop the situation. The only way to deal with congestion is to reduce the number of cars on the road. And you have to do that through making buses more accessible, by encouraging walking and cycling, electric bikes. I'm in favour of electric scooters when they're used correctly, with PPE being worn, headgear and etc. The same way that anyone riding a bike should protect themselves. And maybe even actually introducing courses to school. We used to do cycling proficiency in every school. Now the school has to apply to do that, so they might not get it. Our school at Featherby have never got it. But how about doing scooter proficiency?
Just recognising that it is a thing.
It's a thing. It needs to be taught about. We need to make everybody safe on the road, and that means putting better cycling routes in so that we're taking cyclists away from the path. Now, along the top road is quite good cycling, but the air pollution along there is horrendous. And I'm also in favour of reducing the 30 mile per hour limit down to 20. Not only does it save about 10% in fuel over the same journey, it reduces the amount of carbon that you are producing. And if somebody is hit at 20 versus 30, it's a massive difference. I think it's Glasgow trialled it, and they saw a massive reduction in fatalities. So there's definitely, there's definitely places around the country and in Europe that we can take inspiration from and try and introduce that into Rainham. My worry with the amount of houses that are being built are the amount of cars that we're going to see in addition to what we already have. And we have to be starting to talk about how we solve that. And I think that means bringing everybody together in a citizens' assembly and talking about the problem, providing the facts, and then listening and implementing what decisions are made.
I think the listening thing is so key there. I think before making big, huge decisions, listening needs to be like the most important thing that you do in any change, implementing change. Like, listening is where the learning happens for me. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't kind of, a town as big as Rainham now, like I don't even know what the latest statistics are, people that live in Rainham. Obviously I can't speak for Gillingham, but 26,000 I think it was. I mean, that's a lot of people. When you think people now have, the average got 2 cars. Yeah. 2 cars per household.
Yeah, I think Twiddle's about 15,000.
Do you know what I mean?
Gillingham, I imagine, is probably more closer to sort of 20, maybe 25. I'm not sure total figures,
isn't it?
But it's a lot of figures. And actually, what you see is, especially in Gillingham, there aren't as many cars in certain places because it's not affordable for people. To actually drive a car is a privilege, and I think we've forgotten that.
It is.
And actually, if the government didn't subsidise the system as much as they do, none of us could afford to drive.
People get very, very upset about changes to driving.
They're really upset, yeah.
What is that? Why does that cause such
backlash,
anger?
It
gets met with a really kind of rough edge.
Well, let's think about it. So cars aren't cheap to start with. So even if I'm trying to think. So a new car, you're looking at upwards of 50 grand, most cars now, which I'd never buy a new car. Please don't buy a new car because you lose money as soon as it's driven off the forecourt. But second-hand cars aren't cheap either. And the change from the 2030 ban on new petrol diesel has basically pushed the electric market backwards. So fewer people are going to be able to afford them. But I think it comes down to if someone's worked really hard and they've bought the car that they've been wanting. I'm a petrol head. I grew up around cars. I was a girl racer in so much as we modified our car. It was a tiny 1.2 Mark II Clio, so it wasn't going anywhere fast.
My gosh, that's
but
a
it had
throwback, Kate.
Full body kit, centralised exhaust.
I'm so
smashed it out of the park.
I love that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love cars, and And I understand what it's like when you've wanted a car for so long and you get it, and then to be told you can't use it. I can understand why people would get upset. But people have to think about more than just themselves. And I think the way that this country has changed over there, we've definitely moved away from community. We saw a revival during lockdown. I mean, we had, through my non-profit, 260 volunteers across Medway. At the time, that was the biggest number of volunteers for a single organisation. It was amazing. And there was so much community spirit. Lockdown stopped. People went back to work, went back to the reality because they weren't furloughed anymore. Those that weren't even able to get furloughed were in debt because they'd been paying bills but not earning money. So we become very much about ourselves and our insular family. And that's deliberate. It's so that we don't work as a community, because when we have a community, we're empowered to do things and to say no and fight against things. And I think that if we were to lay it down in paper exactly the risk that we are doing to our children with air pollution and the particulates, I mean, we might not be able to see it like they did when it was, the London smog, but it's there. You just can't see it. And we're constantly breathing it in. I mean, they're finding particulates in babies' lungs. They're finding microplastics in bloody brains and hearts. And, we're doing it wrong. And we need to want to do it better and then work together to do it better.
Do you want to live more sustainably, but you just don't know where to start?
Did you, like me, sign up for Veganuary and accidentally buy chicken sausages on day 2?
Does the whole eco thing leave you feeling confused and sometimes overwhelmed? If so, this is the podcast for you.
Remember to check us out on our socials on Facebook and Instagram, the Rainham Eco Hub. One of the best podcasts that we have probably done. We spoke to a guy called Phil from Christian Climate Action, and he was saying that he was arrested for protesting peacefully with a sign outside a courthouse, and he shared with us that the context in which he was protesting is prohibited from being shared as part of his defence. His context being that it was, at the time, it was 50 degrees in Delhi with water restricted, piled up bodies of loved ones dying from heat strain caused by climate change, and yet the most polluting companies and governments are failing to take action. And so the question really for me is, what would you do to support people to have their voice heard and to be able to express it freely? Because after listening to him, I was just blown away, really.
We didn't even know that the context by which you were protesting is prohibited from your defence. Blew my brains.
No, it's not right, is it? I think we are a country built on protests, peasant revolts, women's votes. We've literally given our lives for the freedoms that we've got today, and that right to say we don't agree. Now, by nature, protest has to be noisy, or it has to be visible, or it has to disrupt. That's the nature of it. And the government have made, basically, in my opinion, they are, okay, how do I break this down? So the world's going to get a lot worse. We're going to see potentially rationing in the next 50 years, water rationing, because we're not building enough reservoirs to collect the water. Our population is increasing. We are helping to home, and we should be, refugees from war-torn places that we're selling arms to. So the reality is things are going to get very sticky in this country. And my fear is that they are cracking down on protests now with the anticipation that it will make things easier, to make things easier to control in the future. So we are going to have an authoritarian state if we do not make the changes now that we know need to be changed.
Don't scare me.
I'm sorry, but it's just so logical that we are going to be facing so many different threats simultaneously. Water, heat, electricity, not having enough power, not having, a place you can live in because the rent's too high. People are going to be starting to get very, very revolutionary if we're not careful. And I feel like they're cracking down now in anticipation of that. I feel like we have to push back at every opportunity. We have to really talk about, who are the real criminals? Because ecocide needs to be taken seriously. We can't allow conglomerates who are generally faceless.
What's that?
Like basically a conglomerate is a connection of businesses that come together. They're massive. They've got huge legal teams, financial teams, shareholders that have, it's worth billions, the company in effect. And if you look at a lot of the food that you buy, for example, it only really comes from 5 main providers across the whole planet. So if something happens in that supply chain, it's going to impact on us. We've only ever got enough food for 2 to 3 weeks in this country. There's no more storage than that. So the supermarkets are only restocked as they need to be purchased because of the cost of storing. So all of these things together mean that we have to work to create solutions, but make sure that we are being listened to. And sometimes the only way to do that is to protest. And I've been to very low-key protests where I've literally stood with a banner or sat with a banner and gone up and down with my wheelchair. I'm not a violent person. I would never, ever condone violence. I think we have to consider how important... I mean, I do like art a lot, but to put a price on a piece of art versus the price of humanity in the community, you know, we have to really think about this.
Yeah, I agree. You put things in such a simple way that makes me just go, oh my gosh.
Isn't it funny how many times we've met you and then this is the first time we've had a conversation like this where I'm just going, okay. Like
I'm a bit full on sometimes. I do apologise.
No, it's not full on. You're able to just break this stuff down, I think, into, I can just understand.
And that's what we need. We need people that haven't been brought up in private education to be a role. We need people that are everyday people that have been through the challenges, that may have done bad things in the past, but we're grown-ups and we get over it. I have not murdered anyone, just to put that in there. So we need people that are genuine people that live in this country, that rely on this country. They're not reliant on money from family or overseas and job offers of the future. You know, I'm not doing this because I want to become an MP. I'm doing this because I feel I have to become an MP.
Final question.
Ooh.
Two-parter as well to finish. So on the 20th of October 2021, 265 MPs voted with the government to reject an attempt to toughen up the approach to discharge sewage into the seas and rivers in our UK. Our current MP voted to allow sewage to be discharged. Question 1, how would you vote in a similar vote if you were MP?
To stop it.
How would you plan to tackle the issues of sewage in the rivers and put pressure on water companies?
Okay, so the reality is that the whole water system has basically been asset stripped. So they were purchased, and over the years they've just been taking money out and not improving anything. So all that money's gone into shareholders, gone into CEO profits and bonuses, and actually replied to a pledge that came in this morning on the email, gillingham.rainham@votegreen.uk. If anyone does want to email me, make a complaint against me or have a nice question. So the question was basically asking the same thing. So what is it? How can we stop this? And what is it? And it basically comes down to greed. So I'm not against business at all. I've run a business. I run a business now, albeit a non-profit business. But I don't believe in making profit from water, energy, food, or education. And food, I'm not saying that you can't profit from any food, but basic food that we need to survive, our vegetables and fruit, should be grown and provided at reasonable costs. So they provide for the farmer and for us, but we're not paying the intermediary, Tesco's, lots of money, or any other Sainsbury's,
other supermarkets are
Aldi,
available.
all of them. So we need to stop that. We need to change the system completely. I believe taking water back into public ownership. You don't have a choice where your water comes from. So why should there be a monopoly on it? It should be run by the government for the people of this country, and it should not be open to foreign investment, which actually, if you look at some of the water companies, there are foreign parts on there, in the same way that our gas pipe system is now owned by a company based in Australia. Our grid is being taken over in bits and bobs. EDF is French owned, and if they get on the, they're up in Suffolk, they're trying to put in a third reactor, that's going to be French owned. So if we want to survive what's coming, we need to bring everything back in-house and work for non-profit and build more reservoirs, because it's ridiculous that none have been built for 20 years.
Because I said, obviously we've asked the same questions to all of the candidates, and I can't get my head around where, imagine this, Kate, when you're elected in, you're standing in, the House of Commons, is it? And they go, right, yay for poo, no for poo.
Yeah,
like
who says yay for poo?
I just...
That needs to go as your strap line.
Who says yay for poo?
Vote Kate.
Do you know what I mean?
She says no to poo.
I just don't. I don't. And I genuinely, like, when we've been asking this question, and even to like our members, like, just trying to understand, there must be some sort of like hidden thing behind that, because I can't imagine why somebody would just say yay.
Did you have a good day at work today? Yeah, I did. How'd you get on? Yeah, I voted yes for poo.
Exactly.
It's mad, isn't it?
I'm just going to have a cup of poo now just to celebrate.
It reminds me of that. You know that Erin Brockovich film? Have you seen that?
You know, I told you I don't watch good films.
So Erin Brockovich, you must have seen that.
Oh, hang on, I do know who she is.
Ago,
I think you've told me about Erin Brockovich.
Amazing woman, right? And she took on a water company and who awfully did some
she did,
things in
didn't she? Yeah, Julia Roberts. Yeah.
And she sat there, not a lawyer, sat there though with this huge, big, massive law firm. And she says, have a drink. Brought that special in for you guys from Hinckley, which is the plant where they and they didn't drink it, obviously. But like, it just reminds me of that, because I just think I just can't get my head around.
Yeah. Surely these MPs are drinking the same water and swimming in the same seas. It's like,
well, they probably don't go swimming,
isn't it?
Yeah, they won't go swimming in the sea, I don't imagine. There's a documentary on Netflix about social networks, and it's exactly the same. No one that works within Twitter, or Twitter, Facebook, will allow their children on social media.
I think I saw
and
that.
I won't allow my children on social media.
I think I saw that.
Not until they're 16, because to put that much kind of pressure onto a child, I mean, the whole of I think we're going to see a bit of a protest against social media. I think you'll see more young people moving away from it.
Have you seen?
No, I've not seen it, but I think it will be happening.
There is a huge movement of people that are basically saying, nah, this is social media and children, it's just not happening.
No, I mean, my little one, it has a basic phone that just texts, and it's just getting quite fashionable now, like a retro phone. So he doesn't even have smartphone at the moment. And I've said to him, I'm waiting till he's 16. So I hope I can stick to that. And I understand that other parents have different feelings, and work commitments means that, you know, children are being given tablets to entertain them. But that's the reality where we all have to work. We're not going back to the 70s when one guy was working, supporting 2 kids and a wife. We just can't do that anymore.
Like that anymore. No, I hear you.
No.
Totally.
It's just not reality.
Smartphone freechildhood.co.uk if anybody wants to have a little look, not to make you sway your own minds, but just so you can make a bit of an informed decision. Because I think you're right. I think a lot of what you've said is about bringing all of these environmental things to the forefront and having conversations about them, because we've said this for such a long time, Liz, haven't we? Like, we need to start having these big hard conversations and start asking the questions, why? But why? But why?
Why does it make you angry that we ask you to drive at 20 not 30? What is it about that?
What is it?
And just trying to understand that, like, it isn't a case of a goodie and a baddie and like somebody right and somebody wrong. It's actually like, you know, these people's children are affected, and
my children, and like drill down to, I guess, instead of asking the question of other people, like ask the question of ourselves, I guess, because I'm not perfect. Like, I literally put my hands up all the time and just say I get it wrong. And I think being able to ask yourself the question of like, why does this rile me about X, Y and Z? Kind of gets you to...
What is it? Yeah, it's such a good point. What is it that's annoying me about this?
Because, you know, you've said oftentimes about... we have a conversation before, I think in the community organising episode, and you were saying about like power, like you don't like people in power. And I was like, I don't know if it's that you don't like people in power. I think for you, it's about the power imbalance and how some people have got loads of power and other people feel powerless. And I think...
And use of power and experience of use of power.
Exactly,
and things like that as well.
And recognising when you have it, I mean...
That's a big responsibility.
It is a big responsibility. And actually, when you have that, you're dangerous if you don't realise you have it. And I guess it's kind of, exploring all of those things, isn't it? It's quite
It's big. Like, just to go off on a bit of a divergence, I'm very good at going off on divergence. The 15-minute cities and the protests that you've seen from people that have basically been told that people are trying to stop them living. But the reality, a 15-minute city was proposed by Oxford Council. And the whole purpose of it was to say that we should be able to work, live and study where we live without moving too far away from there. All towns used to be built with everything in them. You had your bakers, you had your butchers, you had greengrocers, you had the post office, school. You could walk around where you lived without worrying about cars.
How have we got to the point where people are angry about that? How are we angry about...
Because we've been sold the consumer dream. Rather than being citizens, we're treated as consumers and customers, rather than citizens who have a duty to make their family and friends and community better.
Just doesn't make any sense. You're trained to be enraged about something all the time, aren't you?
But also, I think there's a lot of distrust at the moment, especially when it's being put onto somebody. And that's why I go back to doing the listening part is so important when you're trying to implement change in communities, because you could be implementing change. Like we've pushed for certain agendas in our town that are benefiting the environment, but I wouldn't feel confident doing that if we hadn't actually sat down and spoken to other residents, listened to what their views were. Do you know what I mean? Like that is such a big part of it. And I think having the trust and the kind of the collective action of other people that are going to say, yeah, I'm behind that. It's kind of regardless, isn't it?
And if you speak to the people that are, again, back to the 15-minute cities, if you speak to them, actually, by the time you get down to it, they're in favour of them.
Pretty nice.
But not in the way that social media has projected it to them. They're made to feel scared. And when you become scared, you become fearful, you act. It's fight or flight, isn't it? Yeah. And these people are fighting for something that they feel they're going to lose, when in fact they're given a massive gift that should benefit them. And it's trying to listen to them listen to you, and hopefully coming to, meeting in the middle.
I've really enjoyed this. I think every time we do a podcast, I'm like, I could just carry on this conversation.
No, we never have a bad podcast time, do we? We always enjoy it.
Love it.
It's been really nice talking to you, Kate.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on.
No, thank you. And good luck for whatever comes. I'm sure you're going to have loads of fun in the next couple of weeks.
It's going to be interesting.
Well done for standing. Thank you.
Take care.
See you later.
We hope that you really enjoyed listening to this little mini-series on politics, and that you have also been able to get a little bit more in-depth information to help inform your decision in the next coming general election.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode and asked just 3 things of you to help our podcast grow and help us to learn. So please subscribe and rate the podcast. Please share with your friends and family. And please do follow us and engage on our socials on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and now on TikTok. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.
This has been an I Am Listening exclusive podcast. For more information, head over to our website, im-listening.co.uk.